Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. So today is my 10k Q&A special, which feels really outdated now because I think at the point of recording this video, I'm at 20,000. A lot has happened in a few days. Like, I don't understand the internet. Like, literally, I remember having a FaceTime with one of my close friends and I was at 5,000. This was on Monday. On Monday, I was at 5,000 subscribers, and she was congratulating me like, "Well done, you made it to 5k." And we were like super excited and stuff. And now, that was Monday. Today is Sunday, and we're at 20,000. Like, absolutely insane. I have no idea what's going on, but I'm very grateful. So thank you very much to everyone who's decided to join the channel and who's decided to stick around. I hope I continue to make content that you enjoy and that content that you love. So let's answer your questions. So there were quite a lot of questions, so I'm not going to be able to answer all of them, but I will try and do as many as I can. A lot of them were quite similar anyway, so I think I'll still cover a lot of ground, but let's get into it. Jimmy asks, are you black or Japanese? I need answers. Jimmy, my boy, come close. Do I look Japanese to you? If I do, then you might need to go to Specsavers, or if you're not British, I don't know what your optician's brands are, but wherever they do glasses, you need to go visit them because I have no idea what Japanese. Jimmy, come on, please, be serious. I did actually get quite a lot of questions on my ethnicity and my ethnic background. This is a question I think I'll be answering for the rest of my time on the internet because I used to get this question all the time on TikTok. I also get this question all the time on YouTube, and it seems like no matter how many times I answer it, I'll still be answering it till the end of time. But for those of you who are curious, my ethnicity is my dad is South African, my mum is Zimbabwean, and I myself was born in Zimbabwe. That is my ethnic background. Lucy asks, how did you meet your boyfriend? We met in school. So I met my boyfriend during my sixth form years. So those of you who aren't British, you attend sixth form between the ages of 16 and 18. So I don't know what grades that would be in other parts of the world. I think in America that would be your senior year of high school, if I'm not wrong. I have no idea. But let me know in the comments because I do have quite a large American following, interestingly enough. So I would like to know what years are you in or what grades are you in when you're 16 and 18. My only knowledge of American high school is literally High School Musical. So I'll be lying if I said that I was well informed in this subject. Greg asks, what's your opinion on Andrew Tate? Do you know what's really funny, right? I had no idea who Andrew Tate was until after he got banned. I knew his face, right? Because I used to see random clips of him all over social media, like on YouTube Shorts and on TikTok, but I didn't know who he was. Like, I didn't know his name or anything. But then when he got banned, I have no idea what the hell happened, but I couldn't escape him. Like, he was everywhere. Like, people were making videos about him. He was all over YouTube Shorts, even more than usual. He was all over TikTok more than usual. So I was like, okay, fine, algorithm, fine. I will find out who this man is. You clearly want me to know who this Andrew Tate guy is. So I'm going to go and have a look to discover who he is. So I watched some of his content, and I understand why he rubs people the wrong way. I think it's mainly his delivery. I don't think he says anything that's super crazy. Like, he says a lot of stuff that's true, to be quite honest, but his delivery, I think, is what makes him a bit more abrasive to people. It's funny because when I watch Andrew Tate, he reminds me of like old like school days. Like, the way he talks, you can just tell he grew up in Britain, right? Because he says things like top G. I'm a top G. Anyone who grew up in Britain and went to school during the 2000s, like, that's pretty much how the kids used to talk, you know, like, I'm a top G. We would say it ironically though, like, it wasn't something that was serious, like, it was very ironic. And I'm pretty sure Andrew Tate, when he says it, he's also being very ironic. I don't think he means it when he says it, but it's just funny to listen to him talk because yeah, it takes me back. Whenever I hear him say it, just takes me back. I think Andrew Tate is very much a massive piss take. That's the energy I get from him, in the sense that he likes to wind people up. He enjoys the banter of getting on people's nerves. And yeah, I think that's probably what a lot of the problems that people have with him is, to be honest, because if you take Andrew Tate literally and you take him very seriously, I can understand why you'd have a problem with him. But if you understand his humor style and you don't take him too seriously, I don't think you'd have a problem with him. Personally, I'm not a fan of Andrew Tate, but I don't hate Andrew Tate. I find him kind of funny sometimes, I'll be honest. But yeah, like, I don't think he deserved to be deplatformed or banned, but I'm also anti-censorship and very pro freedom of speech anyway. So regardless of whether you say views that I disagree with, I still think you should be allowed to say them, because that's how we're able to have healthy debates and discourse. When you start censoring people, then you're now stepping into authoritarianism, and I'm not really a big fan of that. Brandon asks, are you religious, Christian, Catholic, just plain spiritual? I'm Christian. Thank you for your question, Brandon. My relationship with religion has been really interesting, because I grew up Christian. I was raised Christian. My parents are Christian. And so I grew up in the church. But then I kind of distanced myself from the church as I got a little bit older, because I had a lot of questions and stuff. I became very skeptical of everything and stuff, and I kind of became a lot less religious. I stopped going to church, which broke my mother's heart, bless her. I think she nearly collapsed. But as I've gotten older, I've started to find a new appreciation for religion and all of its functions and the things that it gives to people. And so I have started to find my way back to God again. I have started to adopt Christianity again. Right now, I would classify myself as a spiritual Christian, because I'm not as religious as I hope to become moving forward. Alan asks, what's your take on veganism and Earthling Ed? I don't know who Earthling Ed is. And my take on veganism is I don't particularly care. Like, I don't care what people choose to eat and what they don't eat. I do have an issue with militant vegans, though. You know, the ones who just can't be vegan in peace. They have to recruit everyone, and they behave like Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, those ones. I do have a problem with them, because I do find them very annoying, because they are really like Jehovah's Witnesses. You know how Jehovah's Witnesses will like come and knock on your door and they'll be like, hi, do you want to hear about Jesus? That's the militant vegans. Except they're like, hi, do you want to hear about the chickens? And it's like, no, I want to eat them. So where do we go from here? I just think it's ridiculous that people think that they can decide your morality just because you don't choose to eat the same things or not eat the same things that they do. Because if a Christian was to go around telling you that you're going to hell because of their religious beliefs, you would say that's inappropriate and unacceptable. So I don't see why it's acceptable for vegans to do it. I don't subscribe to your vegan ideology, so therefore your standards of what's deemed moral and immoral don't apply to me in my worldview, in the same way that my views, based on my Christian views, wouldn't apply to you because you don't subscribe to the Christian faith. And that's how I feel about veganism. I think people should eat whatever the hell they want and leave everyone else alone. Jack asks, what are your personal views on Jordan Peterson? You critique the logical inconsistencies of his critics in your video, but I'm curious about your own take on him. So I actually really like Jordan Peterson. I think that he's a brilliant mind. I think he's very compassionate. I think he's a very empathetic person. The level to which he feels the suffering of others is deeper than I think your average person. It's funny, the way I discovered Jordan Peterson is because of his haters, which is why I think haters are your best marketers. Like, honestly, haters give you the best promotion. Because the way I discovered Jordan Peterson was I used to watch Joe Rogan's podcast. And then when I joined TikTok last year, this was the first time I'd learned that there are people who really hate Joe Rogan. Like, I had no idea. Because on YouTube, Joe Rogan doesn't really get a lot of hate like that. So when I saw these people calling Joe Rogan a misogynist, racist, and all this kind of stuff, I was like, I've watched Joe Rogan's podcast, and that is a bad characterization of who he is. But then I also noticed that the same people who really despise Joe Rogan also happen to despise Jordan Peterson. So I was like, if they're wrong about Joe Rogan, then what are the odds that they're also wrong about whoever this Jordan Peterson guy is? And Lord behold, they were incorrect about the way they characterized him, because when I discovered him, he wasn't the monster that they had portrayed him to be. And you know, I really enjoyed his like clinical psychology content and stuff, even went as far as to buy his book 12 Rules for Life. Still haven't read it yet, but I bought the book. But yeah, so I do have to really send a big shout out and a thank you to all of the Jordan Peterson haters, because it's because of you that I was able to discover the great mind that is Jordan Peterson. So thank you for that. I very much appreciate it. Just a Fairy Story asks, I'm sorry, Just a Fairy Story, your question is very long. I will read it, but just for the sake of this video, I'm just going to read the first part of it. So you said, what do you think is the biggest cultural difference between the US and the UK? And do you think the British are just better storytellers? I don't know if we're better storytellers. I think British people would be better storytellers to Americans because Americans have a thing about British accents, which I find really interesting because British people don't seem to have the same fascination with American accents. But I think that's just because we grew up with a lot of American television. So your accents to us aren't as like mesmerizing because we've been hearing them since we were kids. Whereas with you guys, I don't think you guys have any of our media over there. So when you hear our accents, it sounds kind of like more interesting and more intriguing. Because when I hear Southern American accents, I do find those to be really interesting. Like, I want to go wherever Michael McConaughey, wherever he's from, I want to go there because I really like the sound of his accent. Because that's not one that we hear very much in the media. But what do I think are the biggest cultural differences between the UK and the US? So I've been on the internet now since 2021. I started out on TikTok, and so that was my first introduction to real Americans. Because prior to that, my only experience with Americans was through like television, just like watching your TV shows and all that kind of stuff. So that was my first time actually talking to Americans, and that was when it really like highlighted to me that we have a lot of differences that I wasn't aware of before. Like, we have a lot of differences, which is pretty cool, I think, though. But the differences that I've noticed between Americans and British people is that Americans are very passionate. Like, Americans are super, super passionate. You guys care a lot about things. And I think that's the reason why you guys, it seems like in America, from an outsider's perspective, it seems like you guys love your marches, you love your protests, you know, you're all about it, you know what I mean? You guys are very passionate. You're also very optimistic, which is very different to British people, because I would say that Brits are more pessimistic than optimistic. I think this is also the reason why British people are super sarcastic. Like, sarcasm is my first language. I love sarcasm. And I think British people are very, very sarcastic because it's kind of like how we cope with life. We just make fun of everything and we just make sarcastic comments about everything. But yeah, I think Americans are very, very optimistic, and you're very, very you're very optimistic, you're very passionate, which is a contrast to us. That's why you'll often see a lot of Brits who have big dreams, like they're big dreamers, will often move to America because the climate in America just very much nourishes that kind of perspective. Whereas with British people, I feel like the culture here is a lot more to just kind of just not to stand out too much, you know what I mean? Just like kind of like chill out, you know what I mean? I now understand why whenever Americans take our shows, they always have to remake them. I never used to understand that, because whenever we take your shows, we keep them as they are in their original form. But when you take our shows, you remake them. By the way, I will never forgive you for what you did to the In-Betweeners. Your remake, straight to jail. Whoever did that, straight to jail. But I do now understand why you guys have to remake our shows, because our British comedy is not one that I think the Americans would understand. I think Americans would find our humor to be quite dark and depressing. It's not to say that British people are like moody and just like miserable or anything. I think British people are very polite and we're very nice. But we're just not as like preppy as you are, I guess is my point. I also do find the banter that Brits and Americans have to be really funny, because it's always based around the same thing, which is how we both speak the language. Like, you'll see like Americans, whenever they try and do impressions of us, they'll be like, what about all? And then we'll make fun of you guys for the way you say words, because you guys say aluminum instead of aluminium. You guys say aluminum. Who decided that? And then also the way you guys say mirror, I find to be really interesting, because it doesn't even sound like a word. It's like mirror, mirror, mirror. When Americans say the word mirror, it doesn't sound like a real word. It kind of sounds like you're having a stroke, to be quite honest. But Americans are cool though. I think it's funny that we always have the same kind of banter, which is always based around who's speaking the English language correctly. And if we do have to finish that debate, I personally would say that it's those who live in the land of which that language came from. But every original needs a good remix, right? So, and that's how I view American English. It's the remix. LH asks, what are your parents like? Meaning, what important things have they taught you? So, my parents are awesome. I adore my parents. So, what kind of things have they taught me? My parents taught me not to make excuses, to get on with work and to be the best version of yourself, because my mum raised me to believe that your children should always be more successful than you. And so that was kind of the trajectory that she put me on. When I was younger, I hated it because my mum was so militant, right, when it came to making sure that she was priming me to be successful. Because I remember when I was in school and stuff, like I would go into parents' evening and my teacher would be setting me my target grades. And my mum would be sitting there nodding like, yep, lovely. The moment my ass got in that car, this woman was setting me her own grades, but they were higher than the grades that my teacher was setting me. So what she would do was she would use the target grades that my teacher was giving me as a gauge for how high she should set her targets. So whenever I was coming home after like exams and stuff, I was always expected to meet her targets. And it was funny because at the time I used to hate it. I used to be like, oh, but now looking back, it's because of her that I did well academically. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have, because I didn't go to a school where they pushed us really. I went to a school where they pushed us to be the bare minimum, if I'm being honest. I didn't go to one of those schools where they encourage you to be the best of the best, you know? It wasn't a great school. Oh, camera died. But yeah, so as I was saying, like my school, I didn't go to like a very good school. So the unfortunate things with these kind of schools is they don't really push kids to do the best that they can do. They do kind of encourage kids to just be the bare minimum. Like they encourage you to just get a C or a D, and that's kind of like, for them, that's them. As long as you just get a high enough grade for them to say that you passed and didn't fail, then that's basically they're content with that. And that's why I think a lot of state schools fail a lot of kids, like especially working class kids. But where I was lucky is that I had my parents, and African parents very much value education and value success. And so where my school and my teachers were lacking in terms of pushing me to reach my truest potential, my mum was picking up the slack. By force, by fire, that woman was picking up the slack. There was me coming home with a C was unacceptable. Like that would, like in the classroom, I would see teachers saying to other students, just get a C, you'll be fine. Just long as you just get a C. To my mum, that would have been a fail. If I came home with a C, what are we celebrating? What did you do exactly? What did you accomplish? A C? What am I supposed to do with that? It's kind of the energy I would have gotten. I make her sound like she was like mean and militant. She wasn't. She was brilliant. But it's just, she definitely had high standards for me. And that pushed me to do well. So I would say that my parents raised me to be hardworking. You know, they instilled in me the importance of a good work ethic. And they taught me to not make excuses. And all of that has been very beneficial for me in my life, because it's made it so that whatever I've wanted, I've always managed to get it, because I don't cancel myself out before I even try, because I think that if I put my mind to something, I can make it happen. And YouTube seems to be the latest project that's proven that to be true, which is pretty cool. So Steve asks, how has your YouTube channel affected your personal relationships with your spouse, family, and friends? Do you talk about the issues you cover on your channel with them? So it hasn't actually affected my family or friends or anything in any way, because these are all conversations I'd already had with them in real life. So it's not really like a culture shock for them to watch me on YouTube talking about this stuff, because I talk about this stuff all the time. To be honest, I had to come on YouTube because some of them got sick of me. A lot of these conversations that I'm having here, I've already had with my friends and my partner and my, maybe not so much with my parents, because my parents are really laid back, right? So they don't watch the news. And, you know, they keep up to date just enough to know what's going on, but they don't really watch the news like that. So they're like the happiest people you'll meet. I enjoy spending time with my parents because they're just so disconnected from all the craziness that's going on. They're just so relaxed. They're very refreshing to be around. I literally remember once I went to my parents' house and I was just talking to them about, like, I was just going on a little rant about stuff that was happening in the news. I was like, Mom, did you know about this? And did you know this is happening and this is happening? And her response was literally like, oh, that doesn't sound very good. Are you hungry? Do you want some dinner? They don't know a whole lot about what's going on with the culture war and all that kind of stuff. They're very detached from all of that. And I like it, to be honest, because it means when I go to see them, they're just so happy. Like they're so happy. And the only way you can be like that is if you don't spend a lot of time on the internet, to be honest. So yeah, So it doesn't affect my relationship with my parents. It doesn't affect my relationship with my friends or my partner either, because these are conversations that I've had with them in real life. So so it's not really a big deal. Zadium. Hi, Zadium. You are an OG. Like, you've been here since day one. Like, day one. Every time I see your profile picture and your name, I'm like, Zadium. Loyalty. I appreciate you, Zadium. Thank you so much for sticking around, even when I was getting like 2 views. You're a real one. So you asked, would you make a vlog channel in the future? I'll be honest with you, Zadium. My life is pretty damn boring. Like, I don't really do very much. I work, I spend time with my boyfriend, I spend time with my family. I literally, that's my life. And that's pretty much it. I don't really do anything. My life literally just consists of work, boyfriend, family, and talking to my friends. My friends, unfortunately, don't live in the same place as me. Like, we're all scattered in different cities, so I don't see them as much as I would like to. But yeah, like, my life is very, very boring. I love my life personally, but to watch, it'd be very boring to watch, you know what I mean? So I don't see myself doing a vlog channel anytime soon. If my life got a bit more entertaining, maybe I would, but I don't see that happening. I'm very introverted, and I do prefer to kind of live a very low-key life. I don't really like to go out the house too much, you know what I mean? So I don't think it'll be fun for me to have a vlog channel, to be honest. Thank you for showing interest, but I promise you I would bore you to death. David asks, you being so young, how did you keep from being indoctrinated in school? You have such a common sense outlook and express yourself so well. I'm happy I found you. Keep growing your audience. You have an important voice. Thank you, David. That is a really sweet message. I also really appreciate that you have so much faith in me that you think I wasn't ever indoctrinated at any point, because I was 100%. I would say for me, I became indoctrinated when I went to university. That's when I started learning about all this stuff. Before I went to uni, I'd never thought about things like gender and how my race affects me in the world. Like, these are things I'd never ever thought about before I went to uni. And it's interesting because the subject I studied had absolutely nothing to do with all of these sociological topics, but yet somehow I ended up learning about them anyway. And it's interesting because I had this conversation with one of my best friends, and she was saying how when she was doing her medicine degree, like, they just started implementing all of these sociological stuff as well, and she just didn't understand. Like, at the time it made sense, but now looking back, she's like, why were we learning any of that stuff? Like, this is science. Like, we should just be learning just basic science. Why are we learning all of this other sociological stuff? But I guess it's crazy because people on the right often say that the universities are becoming indoctrination camps, and they sound crazy when they're saying that, right? They sound paranoid and crazy. But as someone who's been to university and experienced it, they're not wrong. They're not wrong. It doesn't matter how prestige the university you go to is. It doesn't matter how not prestige the university you go to is. You can't really escape this stuff. And that's why I don't think it's a coincidence that whenever you see a young person who has very far left views and ideological perspectives, they more likely than not are either a student or have been a student at a university. Like, it's not a coincidence that most of the far left thinkers are graduates. These ideas are very, very present in the education system. I didn't realize this at the time, but when I look at some of the modules that I did, I realized that I got good grades because I was able to perfectly articulate what my lecturer wanted me to say. So it wasn't like I was getting good grades because I was being a great thinker. I wasn't getting good grades because I was, being very innovative and, looking at things from like an interesting lens and exploring things from outside of the box kind of perspective. No, I was getting good grades in some of these modules because I was able to perfectly articulate exactly what they wanted to hear. So that's problematic because a university or a school is not supposed to teach you what to think. Its priority focus should be to teach you to think. But that's not what some of these universities are doing. They're teaching you what to think as opposed to teaching you to think. And I think this is also the reason why people are losing their ability to critically analyze things. So, yeah, because they've been taught that this is this and that's that. They haven't been taught that this is this, but it could also be this, but it could also be that, and you can kind of formulate which one you think is the best one based on evidence. And I think because these views are so prevalent in these universities, that's how you end up having weird conversations like we need to decolonize mathematics. Like, what the hell does maths have to do with colonization and social studies? Like, what the hell is going on? At this point, to be honest with you, I would say if you're going to go to university, you have to be very, very careful in terms of where you're going, because you want to go to a uni that's actually going to teach you stuff that you need to know. And if you find yourself at a uni that does this kind of stuff, I would strongly suggest you leave, because they're not going to teach you anything that's useful, to be honest. Mia asks, what direction do you see yourself taking your channel in? To be honest, I just want to be able to build a channel where I can just talk about whatever I want. I want to be able to just discuss whatever topics I find of interest to me. Typically, that would center around social issues and stuff like that, because that's the kind of stuff I'm more interested in discussing. So yeah, I don't want to box myself into talking about one particular type of social issue, because I would get very, very bored. So yeah, that's where I see myself taking my channel. Definitely going to continue talking about all the social issues I've discussed so far. Definitely going to continue with the reactions and deep dives and all that kind of stuff. I do actually have a question for you. So how do you prefer my format? So do you like it when I do reaction videos, or do you prefer it when I do my analytical deep dives? With research and stuff like that? Like, which format do you prefer, or do you like it as it is now, where I just mix it up? You know, we throw in some reactions in there, we throw in some analytical deep dives in there. Do you prefer it to be like a mix of the two? I would like to know which one works better for you, so do leave a comment down below to let me know which one you prefer, so I can make the content that is most enjoyable. But yeah, this has been a really long video, but I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you so much for the support and the lovely messages. If you're new here, then like and subscribe. Thank you so much for giving me your time today. I really hope you're enjoying your weekend, and I will see you again on Wednesday.